Question number 3, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by his statement that, quotes, falling off a high horse in Northland can force ACC levies up, end quote? If so, is that why the government has set work and earners levies above the levels recommended by ACC?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I say to the junior leader of the opposition,
Order.
Yes and no.
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little. Order. It's that sort of start to the question, to the answer, does not help the order of this House. Now, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Order.
Is his concern about horses in Northland really about high horses or well-run thoroughbreds?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, all I know was that in 2014, like 2011 and 2008, we went off to the races and we won big time.
Supplementary.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Given that ACC itself has recommended against the $350 million overcharge, why is National forcing Kiwi businesses and workers to pay excess ACC levies that even ACC says it doesn't want or need?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'd remind the member firstly that the ACC board often makes a range of recommendations. In 2010-11, the government actually increased ACC levies by $1.137 billion less than that recommended by ACC. And Mr Speaker, today actually I read an interesting quote that said the following: the employer's levy remains the same at an average of 90 cents per $100 of payroll. Although ACC recommended a reduced levy rate of 85 cents, the government decided there was a need to give employers more stability in levy rates from year to year, as well as building up the reserves. That was from Leanne Dalziel, Labor's ACC Minister in 2002-2003.
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little. Order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Moving on 13 years to this year, is it in the public interest, particularly the interests of levy payers, for ACC to take more in levies than it needs and more than it wants when its work and earners accounts are already overflowing? And if so, how?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I take it from the member he's thinking that we should do as he says, not as they have done. That seems to be the subtext of his question. But I go back to the point I made earlier. Over time, the ACC board has made a series of recommendations. The government adopts what it thinks is right. It's on track to do that. As you know, from April 1 today, there have been further cuts. There'll be more in 1 July, I think, from memory. It's on track for about $1.5 billion worth of cuts in the last 12, 18 months alone.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Given his failure to end his ACC rip-off this year, will he now commit to cutting next year's ACC levies by at least $350 million in the coming budget? And if not, why on earth not?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, what the government will do is get a further set of recommendations, as is required by law, from the ACC board. We'll consider those in the context. But, Mr Speaker, I would make a couple of points, and that is that if one looks at ACC and the factors that drive their levy recommendations, there are a number of moving factors in there, including the discount rate. And so the member just better be a little bit careful what he wishes for, because the ACC board may well come out with a recommendation he doesn't like.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Why does he fail to tell New Zealanders that most of his ACC reductions were just reversing his government's earlier levy hikes put in place because of Nick Smith's created and fake crisis as the smokescreen for privatisation? Why doesn't he reverse those? Tell the truth.
Order. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, it's true that this government put up ACC levies when we first came into office. Well, interesting enough, The member says unnecessarily. The recommendation from the board, which he, by the way, wants us to adopt this year, was to put them up by $1.3 billion. And the reason why the board wanted them to go up by so much was because Labor left ACC unfunded and broke. What a disgrace from the Labor opposition. What a disgrace.
Order. Order. Question number 4, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order.